Sophia Walker's heart raced as she rushed through the dusty streets of Silver Creek, her pristine white wedding dress catching on brambles and thorns. The Montana Territory sun beat down mercilessly, but she couldn't stop running. Behind her, the church bells rang out, calling her to a fate she refused to accept. At 22, she wasn't ready to be the sixth wife of Gerald Blackwood, a wealthy 65-year-old cattle baron who had negotiated with her father for her hand. The year was 1876, and while arranged marriages weren't uncommon in these parts, Sophia couldn't bear the thought of being sold like cattle to a man who smelled of tobacco and whiskey and whose eyes wandered to her in ways that made her skin crawl. "You there, miss?" A deep voice called out, startling her from her panicked flight. Sophia whirled around, nearly losing her balance on the uneven ground. A tall man sat atop a chestnut stallion, his hat pulled low over his eyes, casting shadows across his sun-bronzed face. His duster coat billowed slightly in the warm breeze, and she could see the glint of a revolver at his hip. "I ain't going back," she declared, raising her chin defiantly despite the tremor in her voice. "So if you've been sent to fetch me, you might as well turn around now." The stranger dismounted in one fluid motion, revealing his considerable height. He approached slowly, hands raised slightly to show he meant no harm. Up close, Sophia could see he was younger than she'd first thought, perhaps 30, with eyes the color of a summer storm and a day's worth of stubble darkening his jaw. "I ain't been sent by anyone, madam," he said, his voice carrying a hint of amusement. "But I reckon a woman running hell bent through town in a wedding dress is either the happiest bride alive or one that's changed her mind." Despite her predicament, Sophia felt a nervous laugh escape her lips. "The latter, I'm afraid." The man nodded thoughtfully, then glanced over his shoulder toward the church. The sound of shouting carried on the wind, and Sophia's heart sank. They were coming for her. "Name's Owen Reeves," the stranger said, turning back to her with unexpected urgency in his eyes. "And I'm heading north to Montana Territory. Been working cattle drives, but I've had my fill of Texas dust." He paused, studying her face. "Whoever you're running from, they'll catch you on foot in that dress." The voices grew louder. Sophia glanced anxiously down the road. "Run with me instead," Owen said, the words tumbling out as if they surprised even him. He gestured to his horse. "I don't know your story, but no woman runs like that unless she's desperate. I can get you away from here, give you a chance at something else." Sophia hesitated only a moment. The thought of Gerald Blackwood's liver-spotted hands on her skin made her decision easy. "I'm Sophia Walker," she said, extending her hand, "and I believe I'll take you up on that offer, Mr. Reeves." Without another word, Owen helped her mount his horse, then swung up behind her. The stallion took off at a gallop, kicking up dust as they fled the town of Silver Creek. Sophia didn't look back, not even when she heard her father's angry voice calling her name. She'd made her choice. As they rode, the wedding dress snagged on the saddle, and Sophia tore away pieces of the delicate fabric that would hinder their escape. The wind whipped her dark hair free from its careful arrangement, pins flying away like tiny birds. For the first time in months, despite the danger and uncertainty ahead, she felt free. They rode hard for hours, stopping only when Owen's horse needed rest. At a small creek, Sophia finally slid from the saddle, her legs trembling from the unaccustomed ride. "You'll be sore tomorrow," Owen remarked, helping her down. Especially in that getup, Sophia looked down at her once pristine gown, now torn and dirt-stained. "I didn't exactly plan this escape," she admitted, suddenly aware of how impulsive she'd been. "I don't have anything else." Owen rummaged in his saddlebag and pulled out a simple cotton shirt and worn trousers. "These'll be too big, but they're better than trying to ride in that dress. You can change behind those trees. I'll keep watch." Gratefully, Sophia took the clothes and retreated to privacy. The wedding dress fell away, and with it, the life that had been planned for her without her consent. As she fastened the oversized trousers with a length of rope and rolled up the shirt sleeves, she wondered about the man who had offered her escape. "Why did you help me?" she asked when she returned, the ruined wedding dress bundled in her arms. Owen was kneeling by the creek, refilling their canteen. He glanced up, seeming to choose his words carefully. "I recognize a caged bird when I see one," he said finally. "And I've never been one to stand by when someone needs help." He paused. "Plus, I reckon you're old enough to know your own mind. If you didn't want to marry whoever was waiting at that altar, you shouldn't have to." "He's 65, Sophia said quietly, "and I met him twice. My father owed him money and I was, payment." Owen's jaw tightened. "Then I'm doubly glad I happened by when I did." He stood, capping the canteen. "We should keep moving. They'll be looking for you, and we've left a clear trail so far." As they prepared to continue their journey, Owen showed Sophia how to bury the wedding dress beneath rocks in the creek bed. "Water will wash away the scent," he explained. "Makes it harder for tracking dogs." "You seem to know a lot about not being found," Sophia observed, studying him with new interest. A shadow passed over Owen's face. "Let's just say I've had my share of people looking for me over the years." He helped her back onto the horse. "Now we need to decide where we're heading." "I was bound for Montana before our paths crossed, but I'll take you wherever you want to go." Sophia considered this. She had no family outside Silver Creek, no friends in distant towns who might take her in. "I have nowhere particular in mind," she admitted. "Just away." Owen nodded, understanding in his eyes. "Montana it is, then. I hear Helena's growing fast. A woman with determination like yours could find work there, make a new start." As they rode north, Sophia learned that Owen was a former Texas Ranger who'd left the badge behind after growing disillusioned with the corruption he'd witnessed. He'd spent the last few years working cattle drives, saving his money for a small ranch of his own somewhere with more trees and less desert. "What about you?" he asked as they made camp that first night. "What would you be doing if you weren't running from a wedding?" Sophia poked at the small fire with a stick, watching the sparks rise into the darkening sky. "I used to dream of teaching," she confessed. "I've always loved books, learning, but my father thought education was wasted on girls." Owen passed her a tin plate with beans and salt pork. "Nothing's wasted that brings someone joy," he said simply. "You get to Helena, maybe you can find work in a school." For the first time that day, Sophia smiled genuinely. "Maybe I will." The next morning brought new challenges. Owen spotted dust on the horizon behind them, riders moving fast. "Your intended must have connections," Owen muttered, quickly stomping out their campfire. "We need to move." They rode hard through the morning, veering off the main trail and into rougher country where the horses tracking them would have more difficulty. By midday, they reached a small trading post where Owen exchanged some of his carefully saved coins for supplies, including a simple dress and shawl for Sophia. "The man and woman riding together is easier to spot than a lone cowboy," he explained as they prepared to leave. "From here on, we travel separately when near towns or settlements. I'll go first, you follow half an hour behind. We'll meet up at the North Fork of the creek." "You're risking a lot for a stranger," Sophia said, suddenly uncertain. Owen checked the cinch on his saddle, not meeting her eyes. "Maybe I just don't like seeing someone forced into something against their will." He paused. "Or maybe I've been riding alone too long and welcome the company." They followed this strategy through 2 small settlements, successfully avoiding detection. On the 4th night of their journey, they camped in a sheltered canyon, feeling secure enough to risk a small fire again. As they shared coffee and the last of a rabbit Owen had shot that afternoon, Sophia found herself studying him in the firelight. There was a gentleness to him that belied his weathered appearance and the gun he wore with the ease of long familiarity. "You never told me why you left the Rangers," she said, breaking the comfortable silence. Owen's expression darkened. "Some things a man doesn't like to recall," he said, but after a moment continued. "I joined young, full of ideas about justice and protecting the innocent. Reality was different. The last straw came when my captain ordered us to clear out a settlement of Mexican families to make way for a cattle baron's expansion. They had legal claim to that land, but money spoke louder than law." "What happened?" Sophia asked quietly. "I refused, warned the families instead." Owen stared into the fire. The captain didn't take kindly to insubordination. There was a fight. He didn't walk away from it, and I couldn't wear the badge after that. Sophia absorbed this. You did what was right. Maybe, but right doesn't always keep a man alive. He set his cup down. That was 3 years ago. I've been moving ever since, working cattle, taking odd jobs, keeping to myself. Until you picked up a runaway bride, Sophia said with a small smile. Owen's serious expression softened. Until then. The next day brought a new complication. As they crossed a shallow river, Owen's horse stepped into a hole and stumbled, throwing him. Though the horse recovered, Owen landed awkwardly, a sharp crack announcing something was very wrong. My leg, he gasped, face white with pain as Sophia rushed to his side. Broken, I think. Sophia helped him to the riverbank, her mind racing. They were at least 2 days from the next town of any size, and Owen couldn't ride. For the first time since their escape began, she felt true fear. I'll need to set it, she said, surprising herself with her calm voice. My mother was a healer before she died. I watched her treat breaks. Owen nodded grimly. Do what you need to. Using branches for splints and strips torn from her spare petticoat, Sophia set Owen's broken leg as best she could. His only sound was a sharp intake of breath when the bone aligned, though sweat beaded on his forehead. You've done this before, he observed when she finished. Only on a ranch hand once, she admitted. Mother guided my hands then. This time I had to remember. They were stranded, unable to continue until Owen could ride. Sophia took charge, building a more substantial shelter from branches and their blankets, setting snares for rabbits as Owen had shown her, and keeping watch for pursuers. On the 3rd day of their unplanned camp, Owen's fever spiked. The break had become infected despite Sophia's care. She bathed his forehead with cool river water and crushed the last of their willow bark for tea to bring down the fever. You should go on, Owen murmured deliriously. They'll find us both if you stay. I'm not leaving you, Sophia said firmly, holding the tin cup to his lips. Drink this. You saved me, now I'm saving you. That night, as Owen thrashed in fever dreams, Sophia kept vigil. She spoke softly to him, telling him about her childhood on her father's small ranch, about the books she'd secretly read by candlelight, about her dreams of a different life. Whether he heard or not, the talking calmed her, gave her purpose. By morning, the fever had broken. Owen woke to find Sophia curled beside him, her hand resting protectively on his chest even in sleep. Something shifted in him as he watched her, a realization that this woman he'd impulsively rescued had become important to him in ways he hadn't anticipated. Over the next week, they settled into a routine. Sophia hunted and gathered food, improved their shelter, and cared for Owen's leg. Owen, though frustrated by his helplessness, taught Sophia more survival skills: how to track game, which plants were safe to eat, how to use his revolver if necessary. You're a natural, he told her one evening as she returned with 2 rabbits from the snares. Most city women would have collapsed into hysterics by now. Sophia laughed. I'm hardly a city woman. I grew up on a ranch, remember? Besides, this is freedom, even with the difficulties. She sat beside him, beginning to clean the rabbits. I've made my own decisions every day out here. That's worth any hardship. Owen watched her capable hands work. You're remarkable, Sophia Walker. Their eyes met, and something electric passed between them. Sophia looked away first, suddenly aware of her disheveled appearance and the intimacy of their situation. As days passed and Owen's strength returned, they began to talk of continuing their journey. Though the broken leg would take weeks to heal properly, Owen believed he could ride short distances if they fashioned a better splint and took it slowly. The morning they planned to leave, disaster struck. Sophia was at the river filling their canteens when she heard horses approaching. Ducking behind bushes, she watched in horror as 4 men rode into their camp. Even at a distance, she recognized her father's foreman, Sam Miller, and one of Gerald Blackwood's sons. Owen was trapped, unable to run. Sophia saw him reach for his revolver, but he was outnumbered and injured. They quickly subdued him, demanding to know where the girl was. She's long gone, Owen said, his voice carrying clearly to where Sophia hid. Headed for California last I saw her. You're wasting your time. Sam struck him, the sound making Sophia wince. You're lying. Her dress was found not 3 days' ride from here. The tracks show 2 horses until recently. Sophia's mind raced. She could run, perhaps escape while they were occupied with Owen, but that would mean leaving him to face their wrath alone. Her fingers closed around the revolver she carried now, Owen's spare that he'd insisted she keep. Decision made, she checked the chambers as he'd taught her, then stepped out from her hiding place. Let him go, she called, aiming the gun at Sam. He's hurt and had nothing to do with my leaving. It was my choice. The men turned, surprise evident on their faces. Miss Walker, Sam said, recovering quickly, your father's been worried sick, Mr. Blackwood too. This man kidnapped you, he did no such thing, Sophia interrupted. I ran because I refused to be sold like property. Mr. Reeves merely offered assistance when he saw a woman in distress. Gerald Blackwood's son, Thomas, stepped forward. Whatever the circumstance, you're coming back with us. The wedding will proceed as arranged. I would rather die, Sophia said, her voice steady even as her hands trembled slightly on the gun. Owen, despite his bonds, managed to struggle to his feet, balancing awkwardly on his good leg. The lady has made her choice clear, he said. I suggest you respect it, Sam laughed. Or what? You can barely stand and she's never fired a gun in her life. Perhaps not, came a new voice from the trees behind them, but I have many times. All heads turned to see an older man on horseback, a shotgun resting casually across his lap. Behind him were 3 more riders, all armed. Marshal Davis, Owen said, recognition and relief in his voice. Your timing is impeccable. The marshal, a gray-haired man with sharp eyes, surveyed the scene. Reeves, been a while, seem to have found yourself in a situation here. These men are attempting to force this woman to return to a marriage she does not consent to, Owen explained. And as you can see, I'm in no condition to be kidnapping anyone. Marshal Davis turned his attention to Sophia. That true, miss. With the arrival of lawmen, Sophia lowered her gun but stood her ground. Yes, sir. My father arranged my marriage to a man 3 times my age without my consent. I fled and Mr. Reeves offered assistance. He broke his leg several days ago and we've been camped here while he heals. The marshal nodded thoughtfully, then addressed Sam and the others. Seems to me forcing a woman to marry against her will isn't exactly legal, even if her father arranged it. She's his daughter, Thomas Blackwood protested. He has rights not to sell her, the marshal interrupted. Now I suggest you gentlemen ride back where you came from. Tell Mr. Walker and Mr. Blackwood that this matter is closed. Sam's hand twitched toward his gun, but the marshal's deputies already had their weapons trained on him. After a tense moment, he relented. This isn't over, he muttered as they mounted their horses. I believe it is, Marshal Davis replied calmly. When they had ridden away, the marshal dismounted and approached Owen and Sophia. Now, let's see about that leg. Reeves always did have a talent for finding trouble. It turned out Marshal Davis and Owen had history. Davis had been Owen's first captain in the Rangers before retiring to become a territorial marshal in Montana. He and his deputies were tracking cattle rustlers when they'd heard gunshots from Owen and Sophia's confrontation with their pursuers. Lucky for you we were in the area, Davis said as one of his deputies, a former Army medic, examined Owen's leg. Though I'm curious how a Texas boy ended up in these parts with a runaway bride. Over coffee, Owen and Sophia shared their story. The marshal listened without interruption, his weathered face revealing nothing until they finished. Well, he said finally, seems to me you both could use a fresh start. He looked at Owen. The deputy position in Helena is still open. Town's growing, needs good men who know right from wrong. Comes with a small house on the edge of town. Owen looked stunned. You're offering me a job after how I left the Rangers, Davis snorted. I heard what happened with Captain Forrester. Man was corrupt to the bone. You did what was right, even if the way you did it wasn't exactly by the book. He glanced at Sophia. And Helena's got a new school looking for teachers, especially ones willing to start with little experience. Sophia's heart leapt. How did you know I wanted to teach? The marshal smiled slightly. I didn't. But you strike me as an educated woman, and teachers are in short supply out here." The next morning, Marshal Davis and his deputies helped them break camp. Owen's leg was rebandaged, and they fashioned a better splint that would allow him to ride with less pain. The marshal insisted they travel with his group to Helena, both for protection and to ensure Owen's injury was properly tended. The journey took over a week, with frequent stops to rest Owen's leg. During that time, Sophia found herself drawn more and more to the quiet cowboy who had risked everything to help her. She noticed the way his eyes followed her, the gentle concern in his voice when he asked if she was tired, the way he insisted she take the better sleeping spot each night. For his part, Owen was fighting a losing battle against his growing feelings for Sophia. Her courage, intelligence, and quiet strength had impressed him from the beginning, but now he found himself looking forward to their conversations around the campfire, memorizing the sound of her laugh, admiring the determination that had kept them both alive in the wilderness. "You ever think about settling down, Reeves?" Marshal Davis asked one evening as they sat apart from the others. Owen shrugged. "Never seemed in the cards for me, always moving, always looking over my shoulder." "That life gets old," Davis said, glancing meaningfully toward Sophia, who was deep in conversation with the deputy's wife. "Sometimes a man finds something worth stopping for." Owen followed his gaze. "She deserves better than a former ranger with a price on his head in Texas." "Texas is a long way from Montana," Davis pointed out, "and that price might not exist anymore. Forrester had few friends by the end, most figured he got what was coming to him." This news gave Owen pause. He'd been running so long, the idea of stopping, of building something permanent, seemed foreign yet increasingly appealing. They reached Helena on a crisp autumn day, the town bustling with activity. New buildings were going up, businesses opening, families arriving. It was a place of beginnings, of possibilities. True to his word, Marshal Davis introduced Sophia to the school board, who were impressed with her knowledge and enthusiasm despite her lack of formal teaching experience. They offered her a position on the spot, with a small room above the schoolhouse as lodging until she could find more suitable accommodations. Owen, still healing, moved into the deputy's house on the edge of town. It was simple 2 rooms with a lean-to kitchen, but after years of sleeping under the stars, it felt luxurious. Marshal Davis arranged for the town doctor to properly set his leg, and within a month, Owen was able to begin his duties, albeit with a pronounced limp that the doctor warned might be permanent. During those first weeks in Helena, Owen and Sophia saw each other frequently. He would escort her home from the school in the evenings, and she would bring him dinner twice a week, claiming it was to ensure he was eating properly while healing. Their friendship deepened, but both were cautious, aware of how their unusual circumstances had thrown them together. "The children asked about you today," Sophia told him one evening as they sat on the small porch of his house. "They want to know if the deputy with the limp is a real cowboy or just pretending." Owen chuckled. "What did you tell them? That you were both a cowboy who became a lawman?" She smiled. "They were most impressed and want you to visit the school to tell them stories of the wild frontier." "Not sure their parents would appreciate some of my stories," Owen said, but his eyes were warm as he looked at her. "You look happy, Sophia. Teaching suits you." She nodded. "I love it. The children are eager to learn and the parents have been surprisingly supportive." She paused. "And you, are you happy here?" Owen considered this. "I think I could be," he said finally. "It's good to be doing honest work again, to sleep in the same bed each night too. Have something to look forward to." Their eyes met, and Sophia felt a now familiar flutter in her chest. She'd never experienced these feelings before, this mixture of comfort and excitement, safety and anticipation. As winter approached, Helena prepared for the season with a harvest festival. The entire town gathered for dancing, food, and celebration before the harsh Montana winter set in. Sophia, now a respected member of the community, helped organize games for the children. Owen watched from the sidelines, still uncomfortable in large gatherings but unwilling to miss seeing Sophia in her element. She wore a simple blue dress that brought out the color of her eyes, and her dark hair was arranged in soft curls. Several young men had already asked her to dance, which Owen observed with a twist of something that felt uncomfortably like jealousy. "You going to stand there all night or ask the lady to dance?" Marshall Davis appeared beside him, a knowing look in his eyes. Owen shifted uncomfortably. "My leg is healing well enough for one dance," Davis interrupted. "Besides, I've seen how she looks at you when you're not watching. She's turned down 3 offers in the last hour, and I don't think she's waiting for the banker's son." Gathering his courage, Owen approached Sophia as the musicians began a slower tune. "Miss Walker," he said formally, extending his hand. "Would you do me the honor?" Sophia's smile was radiant. "I thought you'd never ask, Deputy Reeves." Despite his limp, Owen moved with natural grace. They didn't speak at first, both acutely aware of the townspeople watching with interest. The former Texas Ranger and the schoolteacher had been the subject of gossip since their arrival. "They're all watching us," Sophia murmured. "Let them," Owen replied, his hand warm against her back. "I only care what one person thinks." The dance ended too soon. As they walked back to the refreshment table, Owen made a decision. "Would you walk with me? There's something I'd like to discuss." They strolled to the edge of the festival grounds, where the light from the lanterns dimmed and the music became a distant backdrop to the sound of the wind in the pines. "I received a letter yesterday," Owen began. "From an old friend in Texas. It seems the charges against me have been dropped. Captain Forrester's corruption was exposed after his death, and my actions have been, if not commended, at least understood." "That's wonderful news," Sophia said, genuinely pleased for him. "You can go home." Owen stopped walking and turned to face her. "That's just it. I've been thinking about what home means. For years, it wasn't a place for me, it was the next town, the next job, the next sunrise over unfamiliar hills." He took her hands in his. "But now I find myself thinking of home as wherever you are." Sophia's breath caught Owen. "I know it's fast," he continued hurriedly. "We met under unusual circumstances, and perhaps gratitude or necessity has confused things. If you don't feel the same," Sophia silenced him by placing her fingers gently against his lips. "When I ran from that church in Silver Creek, I was running from a life decided for me by others. With you, every step has been my choice." She smiled softly. "And I choose you, Owen Reeves. Not out of gratitude or necessity, but because in you I've found someone who sees me as I am and values what he sees." Under the vast Montana sky, with the distant sounds of celebration floating on the night air, Owen drew Sophia into his arms and kissed her. It was gentle at first, then deepened with all the feelings they'd held back during their journey and the weeks that followed. When they finally parted, Owen rested his forehead against hers. "I love you, Sophia Walker. Will you marry me? Not because anyone is forcing you, but because you want to." Sophia laughed, joy bubbling up inside her. Yes, 1,000 times yes. They were married 2 weeks later in Helena's small church. The schoolchildren formed an honor guard, tossing flower petals as Sophia walked down the aisle in a simple cream-colored dress. She'd made herself as different from her abandoned wedding gown as possible. Marshall Davis stood as Owen's best man, beaming with pride as if he'd orchestrated the entire match himself. After the ceremony, Owen surprised Sophia by taking her to a small cabin on 10 acres of land just outside town. "I've been working on it whenever I could," he explained as he carried her across the threshold despite his still healing leg. "Marshall Davis helped me secure the land." "It's not much yet, but it's perfect," Sophia breathed, taking in the simple but sturdy furniture, the stone fireplace, the windows that looked out over rolling hills that would be green come spring. "Our home." Life settled into a rhythm. Sophia continued teaching, while Owen served as deputy and worked their land in his spare time. By spring, they had a vegetable garden and 3 milk cows. By summer, they'd added chickens and a pair of horses. Owen's leg healed enough that his limp was barely noticeable except on cold mornings or after a long day in the saddle. Word reached them that Gerald Blackwood had married another young woman just 3 months after Sophia's escape. Her father had lost his ranch to gambling debts shortly thereafter and headed to California to seek his fortune. Sophia felt a momentary pang for the father she'd once loved, but no regret for the choice she'd made. A year after their wedding, Sophia discovered she was expecting a child. Owen's joy was boundless, though tempered with concern for her health. "I'm not made of glass," she assured him as he insisted on doing more of her chores. "Women have been having babies since the beginning of time." "Not my wife, not my child," he replied, his hand resting protectively over her still flat stomach. "Indulge me a little." As Sophia's pregnancy progressed, Owen expanded their cabin, adding a nursery and improving the kitchen. The whole town seemed invested in their growing family, with gifts of baby clothes and furniture appearing regularly at their door. On a snowy December night, after a difficult but ultimately successful labor, Sophia gave birth to a daughter they named Elizabeth, after Owen's mother. As he held his tiny daughter for the first time, Owen's weathered face softened with a love he'd never imagined possible. "She has your eyes," he whispered to Sophia, who watched them from the bed, exhausted but radiant. "And your stubbornness," Sophia replied with a tired smile. She certainly took her time making an appearance. The years passed in a blur of joy and hard work. Helena grew from a frontier town to a proper city, and Owen eventually left his deputy position to focus on their expanding ranch. Sophia continued teaching until their second child, a son they named William, was born 3 years after Elizabeth. After that, she taught from home, taking in students who needed extra attention or had difficulty reaching the school in town. By 1890, their 10 acres had grown to 100, and their cabin had expanded into a comfortable farmhouse. They raised cattle and horses, hired hands during busy seasons, and became known throughout the region for their hospitality and fair dealings. On the evening of their 15th anniversary, Owen and Sophia sat on their porch, watching their children play in the yard. Elizabeth, now 14, was reading to her 11-year-old brother and their youngest sister, Sarah, who had arrived as a surprise when they thought their family complete. "Do you ever think about it?" Owen asked, his hand finding Sophia's as they rocked side by side. "That day you ran from your wedding, what might have happened if I hadn't been riding through Silver Creek at that exact moment?" Sophia squeezed his hand. "Sometimes. But then I remember something my mother used to say, that life has a way of leading us where we're meant to go, even when the path seems unclear." Owen nodded thoughtfully. "I was lost before I found you, riding without destination, living without purpose. And I was trapped, unable to see a future beyond the next day," Sophia added. "We saved each other, I think." As the sun set over their land, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson, Owen pulled Sophia closer. "Run with me instead," he murmured, echoing the words he'd spoken 15 years earlier. "Best offer I ever made." Sophia turned her face up to his, the years having only deepened her love for this man who had given her the freedom to choose her own path. "Best offer I ever accepted," she replied, and sealed the words with a kiss as their children's laughter floated around them on the evening breeze. In the years that followed, Owen and Sophia watched their children grow into adults with the same independence and strength of character that had brought them together. Elizabeth became a doctor, one of the first female physicians in Montana Territory. William took over the family ranch, expanding it further with innovative techniques he'd learned at agricultural college. Sarah, their free spirit, became a journalist, traveling the changing West and sending home stories that made them proud, if occasionally worried. Their home remained a gathering place for family, for friends, for travelers in need of rest. On quiet evenings, Owen and Sophia would still sit on their porch, hands intertwined, marveling at the life they'd built from that desperate flight from Silver Creek. "You have any regrets?" Owen asked her once, as they celebrated their 30th anniversary surrounded by children and grandchildren. Sophia considered the question, looking around at the faces of those she loved, faces that wouldn't exist if she'd walked down that church aisle to marry Gerald Blackwood. "Not a single one," she answered truthfully. Every step, every choice led us here, and here is exactly where I want to be.